Hi, and welcome to this QuickCapture session. My name is Ismael Chivite. I'm the ArcGIS QuickCapture Product Manager. And with me is Jonathan Hasthorpe. Jonathan works as a product engineer in the team. Together, we're going to give you a quick intro to QuickCapture today, and we hope this session will be informative for you. We are going to start this session with a brief hands-on exercise. Let's pretend that we are volunteering for a shoreline cleanup. We are going to use QuickCapture to document all the trash that we clean. So to do that, get your mobile device and download the QuickCapture app from the store. Then, using your camera or the QuickCapture app, scan the QR code to unlock the QuickCapture project. After that, start capturing a few observations. We want you to use the application before we start the session. I will do the exercise in my machine as well. This is the Windows version of the app, although it behaves exactly the same as the Android and iOS versions that you are using at the moment. I'm going to tap on Continue without signing in, and then I will enter the access code. 1IMU_D. This unlocks the marine debris sample project, which gets downloaded. And if I tap on it, I can start capturing data right away. The idea here is, as you pick up trash, you can report or document what you are taking. So say plastic bottle, number of items, 2, and then move on. If I switch to the map view, you will see that all the data gets recorded geographically. You can tap on the different events that you are capturing, and the application will send the data automatically, or you can send it manually. If you go into the description of this project, you will see that there is a link, and this link opens a dashboard. So in the dashboard, I can see live all the data that you are submitting. And as I zoom to different areas, the data gets all filtered in the different elements. This is, in essence, the whole idea with QuickCapture, to provide the simplest experience possible for people to effectively capture field observations. This is our general agenda for the session. First, we're going to talk about the vision for the product and some use cases very briefly. Then we will have a more technical deep dive into the components of the application, and we will give you some live demonstrations. At the end, we are going to share with you a few ideas we have in regards with our roadmap. So let's get into it. ArcGIS QuickCapture is Esri's rapid data collection app. It's basically a big button or fat button mobile application. With it, we want to provide the simplest experience possible for capturing field observations. And this big button approach to field data capture is ideal for at-speed and rapid data collection workflows. At-speed data collection happens often in moving vehicles. Think of it as a truck or a car. There are many organizations where field crews actually spend a lot of time in the field traveling in a vehicle. And there is no reason why we couldn't equip them with a simple user experience where they can snap a photo, tap on a button right from within the vehicle to capture observations of all sorts, to do asset inventories at speed, to perform quick inspections. Think about aerial surveys, where people are flying in a helicopter or a plane. You want the simplest experience possible in this case, so you don't get distracted with the dialogues in the mobile application and tapping in the right place. You want the simplest user experience, super fast. You see something, you tap on that button to capture that information. Think about emergency response, where not only you have little time to make your observations, you often have little time for training. This is kind of an interesting aspect of QuickCapture. It's so simple to use that it requires almost no training to actually get people productive. This is another example. This is an organization in Canada that is using ArcGIS QuickCapture to create a map of mountain bike trails. So in this case, you can see here in the handlebar of the mountain bike that they have a phone, and that phone is running ArcGIS QuickCapture. The application is connected to an external GNSS receiver to get the most accurate information, because quick doesn't mean poor location necessarily. You can actually get pretty good high accuracy data through QuickCapture by connecting to external GNSS receivers. And what you can see here is that not only they are capturing observations, points, they are also capturing lines. So as they ride the bicycle, they are capturing in 3D the geometry of those mountain bike trails and categorizing them with different levels of difficulty. Let's discuss a little bit about the components of the QuickCapture product. So first of all, the mobile app, which you already downloaded and used. This is the Big Button mobile app built for your mobile devices. It actually runs on Windows too, although the most common platforms where we see people using the app are iOS and Android. The application is configured so you can work against online, but also against ArcGIS Enterprise. Even if you have your own multi-user geodatabases, QuickCapture can work against those. And of course, like any mobile application, it can work online, but also offline. So if you are completely disconnected from the network, QuickCapture still works. All we require really from your device is location services. We need an internal built-in or an external GNSS receiver. So when you push the button, we can capture the information about the location of that event. From a licensing perspective, ArcGIS QuickCapture is included with field workers, creators, and GIS professionals. It's included already at no additional cost, so you may find yourselves that you already have ArcGIS QuickCapture. If you have editor user types, you can buy QuickCapture as an add-on. Finally, and you saw this in the initial exercise, the mobile app can be used even without an ArcGIS account. This is, of course, if you make your QuickCapture project public. And to do that, as we will see later, you need an ArcGIS Hub premium license. The other component of QuickCapture is Designer. Designer is a web tool that is going to help you create your own QuickCapture projects, your own big button, fat button experience. As you can see here, it's a very visual environment where you can drag and drop things, you can add new buttons, you can change labels, you can create new groups, but furthermore, you can also control not only the look and feel, but the behavior of your buttons. What is going to happen when I click or tap on a particular button? Now, the best way to learn about QuickCapture Designer is actually to see it in action. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jonathan Hastorp so he can give us a QuickCapture tour. John?
Thanks, Ishmael. So I'm going to take you through an end-to-end demonstration using the QuickCapture Designer. So we're going to create a project, configure it, and then deploy it to the mobile application. The particular scenario that we're going to take a look at is to create a project allowing us to capture bike trails. So the locations of them, their difficulty, and also points of interest. The foundation of any QuickCapture project is actually one or more ArcGIS feature services. In this particular example, we configured a feature service that contains 3 separate layers. We have a points layer to capture points of interest. So we've symbolized it on the observation type field, and we have the categories of bridge, intersection, lookout, and issue. Then we have a couple of polyline layers configured to capture the bike trails. One of the layers is to capture trails that are paved. The other layer is to capture trails that are unpaved. And both of those have been symbolized on the type attribute, advanced, intermediate, or beginner. The key thing to be aware of is that if you spend a bit of time in your feature service, making sure that the layers are nicely symbolized, then the QuickCapture Designer will actually take a look at the information in this symbology and then use that to generate the buttons. And probably the easiest thing to show you how that works is to actually get stuck into the designer. Now, first of all, we need to sign in to the designer using a named user account that is the creator or of the creator user type. Once signed in, you can see all the projects that you've created. These existing projects, you can go in and edit or view the results. View the results means that you launch a web map containing all the project layers, and then you can obviously see any data that's been submitted to them. But in this case, we want to go in and create a new project. And by clicking this button, you're taken through a wizard. The first step of which is to select the layers that you want to include within your project. So you can basically select as many as you like. But in this case, we just want to include the bike trails feature service that I just showed you within the web map. You can also include, if you choose, layers that have been shared with you coming from your own org or from other organizations as well. Once you've made your selections, you can just click next, and then you're able to configure some basic metadata about your project. You can change the thumbnail, you can give it a new title, configure a data recovery email, and we'll talk about the data recovery process in a little bit more detail later on in the session. And you can also choose the folder within online or enterprise that the created project will be saved in. So let's click create, and you'll see that the designer has gone and created a group for each of the layers within the feature service and a button for each of the symbology types within each of the layers. The other thing to notice is that apart from pulling through the layer names, we've also pulled through the labels from the symbology, the color, and also the shape from the symbology. So this really gives a good first start at a project without actually doing any configuration within the designer itself. And just to show you this is pretty much fully functioning, I'm going to share the project with a group so that I can expose the QR code. Okay, so I'll launch my mobile phone, choose the option to scan the QR code and then download the project just to demonstrate what it looks like. I'll just tidy this up and minimize. Okay, so I can tap the bridge button to capture a bridge feature. I can tap the intersection button to capture an intersection feature. And likewise, I can press any of the trails button to start capturing those polyline features. When I get to the end of the line, I can stop it, and all the captured data is viewable within the map, ready for upload and submission. So this is a pretty good start, but we're going to return to the designer to take things a little bit further in terms of the appearance of the project and also the functionality behind any of the button taps. First off, we're going to have a look at appearance. Now, we can reconfigure the appearance and labels of both groups and buttons. So with groups, we're able to change labels. So I can update this to something a little bit more informative, update the number of columns, which changes the size of buttons. So in this case, we'll put in a size of 3 columns for both of these, basically ensuring that we've got all the buttons in one row. We can configure whether or not the default state of a group is collapsed or expanded, and we can also change the color of the border as well. For buttons, we've got a little bit more control in terms of what we can do. Again, we can change the labels. We can also go in and apply images to the buttons to make them a little bit more informative. So I can add in a bridge, for example, for this bridge button. And then I can do things like change the size of the buttons, the shape, whether or not they're squared and rounded. So just for consistency, I'm going to go in and make all of these buttons rounded. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to shorten this text so it all fits within the same button. I'll remove this image for now, and I'll make sure the sizes of the buttons are consistent. So let's click Save and go back into the mobile application to just view that update. So if we download it, you can see within the updated project straight away, we'll be able to see the updates to the labels and also the buttons and button shapes. One final thing that I want to do actually is to reorder the buttons so that we go from beginner, intermediate to advanced. I'd also like to actually delete one of these buttons because we're not actually interested in collecting one of those features. But I do want to add in a new one to capture toilets or WCs. Now, when the user taps on a button, they capture the location and also a number of attributes in the record that they capture. So if you select on a button and go to the Data tab, you can see the layer that each button is actually submitting records to. And also down here, you can see all of the capture fields. And these are basically the fields within the feature service that is being updated when a button is pressed and a record is sent to it. Now, within these fields, we need to populate them with different values. And the values will be different depending on the button that the user presses. So for the bridge button, the observation type field is going to be updated to be a fixed value of bridge. Intersection, we have a fixed value of intersection, and issue, the observation type field will be updated with the value of issue. For the WC button, we actually haven't configured it to point to a data source. So we need to do that. We'll point it to the same points of interest layer. And then for the observation type, we will just put in WC. And then when the user presses that button, the value will be written to the captured record. Now, some of the other fields that we have access to, for example, speed, can actually be updated by something that we call a device variable. Now, phones are sensors. They can tell you things like your speed, your direction, and we can actually pull through that information and use it to update the records or the fields within the captured records. So for all of these, I'm going to go in and set the speed to be one of the 40 plus device variables that we've configured. So in this case, we're going to have speed in kilometers per hour. You can see down here that horizontal accuracy has been automatically mapped to the horizontal accuracy field. And this is because we have used a predefined field name. If you use the right field names, which we've actually documented, then you can basically have it so that these variables are automatically applied. And Ishmael's going to take you through a bit of a trick to ensure that you can create fields with the correct names. Let's click Save so that we can test it out within the mobile application once more. Okay. Download it, and then once the project's open, we'll capture one of the observation types. Let's capture intersection and quickly send it. If I open up the web map, give it a refresh, you can see we have an intersection feature there. Just open up the properties. You see observation field has been populated with intersection. The speed has been captured with the walking speed. And we've also got the horizontal accuracy being populated as well. Okay, so next up, I want to go in and enable photos for these buttons. Now, I can switch on photos as long as the layers that the buttons are targeting have attachments enabled. And I can also make the photo required or optional. And then we've also got the option to hide the camera preview. Now we want to be able to see the preview so we can actually view the viewfinder and then take the picture. But for some of these, for the WC, we're going to make the photo optional. So let's save it, download the update. Okay, so now I can capture an intersection, attach a photo to it, or for the WC, I'm given the option to take a picture or skip, or add if I do want to add an attachment. And if I just send these features now, I'll click on this one here, go to edit, and you can see the attachment is ready to go. Next, I want to talk to you about the concept of nested data capture and exclusive groups. Now, by default, users can start capturing beginner, intermediate, and advanced trails all at the same time, and they can do it for non-paved as well. Even more than this, at the same time, while they're capturing these polylines, they can go in and capture the point features as they go along. But in this case, we don't really want to allow the user to be able to capture beginner, intermediate, and advanced trails at the same time. A trail that the user's riding down can only be one of these things. It can be one type in terms of difficulty, and it can either be paved or not paved, but not a combination of the above. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable a bit of functionality called exclusive groups. Under settings, you have a tab called exclusive groups, and you can create a new group. So you can give it a default name, but ultimately you can have as many of these exclusive groups as you like, targeting different buttons, but we're going to accept the default. And then next up, we are going to add all of the buttons to the same group. And what this means is that we can only have one of these active at the same time. So if we click done, you can hover over to see which buttons are part of the group, and then we can click save. Once we get the update, we can test it out by clicking beginner, and then as soon as we tap any of the buttons, beginner will end and that new button will start capturing. And we can take a look at the results for that. We've got one line for beginner, followed by the next segment being for advanced. We spoke about fixed values and device variables, but there is another way that values can be written to fields in order to provide a little bit more flexibility to the end user. And this is using something called a user input. Now, user inputs come in two types, project user inputs and button user inputs. And essentially, these will provide a dialog for the user to either manually enter or select values to write to the captured record. So we'll start up by configuring a button user input for the issue button, allowing the user to write some free text comments after they've captured an issue. So all we need to do is choose the field we want to write the value to, so in this case the comments field, and then choose the option for a button user input. You need to create a new one and give it a label, so I'm just going to call it comments. I want it to be multi-line to accept more text, and a hint just to make it clear what the user needs to enter. Okay, and you can optionally make it required. If it's required, it means that the user must complete it before the record will be captured. Click create and then save. Okay. Grab the update. open it, and this time when we press the issue button, we can take the picture, and then after that the user input dialog box pops up ready for some text. So in this case we'll say glass on trail, click done, and that'll be written to the collected attribute, and then send it, and then we'll view it in the web map. If we zoom out over here, okay, and you can see glass on trail has been written to the comments field. A couple of things I want to mention regarding the button user inputs. The first one is you can only have one button user input applied per button. So if, for example, I try and make any of the other fields a button user input, you can't because this one's already been applied. Additionally, depending on the field type you're applying the button user input to, for example, here, this is an integer field, you're going to have different options available. So this one's an integer. If there was any domains applied, whether or not it was a numeric one for a numeric field or text for a text field, these will actually come through to the user input, and the user will only be able to enter something that is within the boundaries of whatever the domain is. Project user inputs are slightly different in the fact that they're entered before buttons are captured and then written to the captured records. To create them, you need to go into settings, and you can see there's an option here called project user inputs. You can create a single project user input per project, but this project user input can be applied to multiple fields within the same button or across different buttons, as long as they are a text-based or string-based field. So there is a limitation there. So to create, just click add, give it enable. In this case, we're just going to do a cost code. We want it to be a single line text input, and the hint will be the root ID dash user ID. We want to apply an input mask, and this is basically a string that defines or restricts what the user can enter, character by character. So we want them to be able to enter in numbers only for the root ID, and then for their own personal ID, that's going to be limited to text. So that'll be A, capital A. So both should be 2 digits, and we will make this required, meaning that they have to enter a user input, otherwise they can't actually proceed and start capturing data with the project. So let's click save, and then the next thing to do, which is pretty important, is to actually define what fields you want the user input to be applied to. So in this case, we will apply it to the cost center field. You can see that we've now got the option to select the project user input we defined, and we'll also do it for the non-paved buttons as well. Start there. Okay, so that's been applied. Now let's save it. Check out the results within the mobile application once more. Okay, so let's grab the update. And now as soon as the project opens, we need to put in that root ID, and because I put the first 2 characters to be text only, it only allows me to put in. So we'll give it a root ID of 89, and then for the cost center parts, we need to put in text. So I'll just put in my initials, click done, and then every time we start capturing the trails, the value that we've written will be written to the cost center field. If, for example, they change it to a different route, or someone else is collecting information, they can actually tap the edit button, and then they can update it at any point. So let's send this record. Okay, and you can see cost code and initials all written to that field. The final thing I want to mention is that you've seen when we are submitting records from the mobile application, they basically disappear once uploaded. Now, to handle this, what you can do is actually create a web map that contains the feature layers that you're actually using within your project, meaning that as soon as they disappear from the device, they'll actually appear in the web map. To do that, all you need to do is to create a web map or save one. And then in the QuickCapture Designer, you can go into Map and change it from the default topographic to the web map that you've created. And again, we'll just jump into the device. We should have another update. And open it up this time. We'll have to obviously put in our cost code. First of all, I'm going to capture a bridge feature. And just to make it a bit easier to find, I'm going to click the edit button down the bottom toolbar, which will allow me to put it in a slightly different location. So I'm going to update the location there. You can see that the map pin is there, or the local data is there. But now if I click send, it disappears off the device, but the next time I do a refresh, it's viewable within the web map. And web maps are obviously handy if you want to also, well, if you want to see your own data, but also the data submitted by other users as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to wrap up and hand you over to Ishmael.
Thank you, John. This was great. There was a lot of content in that demo, pretty comprehensive. I'm going to highlight or reinforce a few ideas that you shared with us. The first one is this notion of device variables. This is kind of an interesting concept where you can use device variables to automatically calculate GIS attributes when a feature is captured. So you tap the button and then the device variable gets the speed, direction of travel, the time of capture, etc. In the help, we have a big table that describes over 40 variables. Now, I want to show you like a little trick to create feature layers that will be mapped to the most common device variables. I'm going to create a new feature layer. And I want this layer to work with ArcGIS QuickCapture. In fact, I want fields in this layer to match the most common device variables. So let's create a layer with points, lines, and polygons. And here is the trick. Check the capture GPS receiver information, because this is going to create a collection of fields and they will have very specific names that match the device variables in QuickCapture. If we have a closer look at the data tab, you can see all the different fields that have been created: speed, direction of travel, compass reading, position, source type. Many of these fields are meant to be used to persist information, metadata information from external GNSS receivers, such as number of satellites, fixed time, station ID. Unless you use an external GPS receiver, you won't see these fields with information. It will be null. But for many others, like the speed, direction of travel, etc., all of this information is going to come through device variables. Now I'm going to switch to QuickCapture, and I'm going to create a new project from that feature layer I just created. If we have a closer look at the data here, you see that I have capture fields, the speed. The device variable is automatically assigned. Position, source type, receiver name, horizontal accuracy, etc. All of them are automatically matched, which is quite nice. The other concept that John highlighted in his demo is that of user inputs. And user inputs are useful because they help you capture additional attributes to the observation that you just made by pushing the button. And John described two types of user inputs: project user inputs and button user inputs. The button user input is triggered every time you push the button. It's ideal if you want to, for example, add some comments to an issue that you are reporting. The second one is project user input. This is a dialog that we show when the project starts. So we can use that value every time a feature is created. We just push that value as an attribute of that feature. And of course, project user inputs can be changed at any time. You can see at the top of the project, there is a bar where you can tap and change it. Okay, so say for example you are doing road damage assessments for a city. You can type in the name of the road and then drive that road and do your work. And when you switch to another road, you can tap at the top, change the name, and that way every observation will have the road name associated. You can make project inputs, buttons, and projects required or optional, that's your call. And you can even implement some data validation rules like input masks and things like that. The other notion that I think is worth highlighting is this idea of nested data capture. QuickCapture supports capturing multiple observations at the same time. In fact, this is the default behavior. Say I'm moving along and I'm digitizing a bike path on my right, on my left, sidewalks. And while I am doing that, while these polylines are being created, I can tap on, say, traffic light or pedestrian crossing. And this can all happen simultaneously, which is really powerful in some workflows. Now, in others, John also demonstrated the use of exclusive groups. In others, it doesn't make sense to capture two features at the same time because they are mutually exclusive. Like for a trail, it's either beginner or it is advanced, but it cannot be both. So for that, you can use your exclusive groups. You can create as many exclusive groups as you like within a project. A few more things that you should know. You can configure online and offline maps with your project. You can see it here in this animation. By default, we give you a default base map, but you can change it. You can in fact go to your maps and you can select existing web maps, vector tile packages, and even mobile map packages you may have created with ArcGIS Pro. You can also configure your projects so the buttons and the map show side by side, like in this animation. And this can be very useful if you want to have a live map with information that is being captured in the field while you are capturing it. Or if you want historical data to be shown for context to help users with their inspections or data capture process. This side-by-side view only works on tablets though, and you have to explicitly activate it in ArcGIS QuickCapture Designer for any project where you want this feature. The mobile application supports direct connections to external GNSS receivers. So as we described at the beginning of this presentation, pretty much all you need in your mobile device for QuickCapture to work is the ability to grab locations, either from a built-in GPS, which most tablets and mobile phones have, or you can connect to an external GNSS receiver. Why would you want to use an external GNSS receiver? First of all, because if used correctly, they can give you much better accuracy than the built-in GPS, and they can be also more consistent. The other aspect is that external GNSS receivers give you access or provide a lot of GNSS metadata. That is information that describes how those locations were obtained, the number of satellites used, the accuracy, the fix type, the time of the fix, etc. And this can be really important for you to really understand the quality of your own data. Remember that through device variables, you can get much of this metadata. The other aspect is the frequency. Typically, a GPS in your smartphone or tablet works at 1 Hz. This means that they give you one location per second. If you are flying in a helicopter or airplane or you are traveling fast, you may actually want to have higher frequencies. External GNSS receivers can often be configured at higher frequencies, such as 5 or even 10 Hz. That gives you much more granular data, and you will create, particularly if you create lines or polygons, much better geometries. Typically, you can connect to these external GNSS receivers via Bluetooth, but we also support in Windows connecting via USB or network connections as well. There are a number of different vendors that have GNSS receivers that are compatible with QuickCapture, and this is greatly described in our documentation in case you want to look at the details. The other aspect, and we touched on this at the beginning when we did the hands-on exercise, is this idea of making your QuickCapture projects public. This is only available to ArcGIS Hub Premium users. If you have ArcGIS Hub Premium, when you go to Share in Designer, you can share your project publicly. This means that users can download and use your project with or without signing in. This is ideal for crowdsourcing, citizen science, community engagement processes or initiatives. And even in emergency response can be useful because operationally, if you just give a project to someone and they don't have to type in any user and password, it's going to be much more quick for them to get up and running. At this moment, I logged in ArcGIS QuickCapture in the website using an account that belongs to an organization that licenses ArcGIS Hub Premium. If you look at the sharing options of a project, you will notice that this option at the top, everyone, public, is available. If you are not running on ArcGIS Hub Premium, then this option will be disabled. Now, once you share your project publicly, we give you straight away a few options to facilitate people to download your project. One is the link, of course. You can give them this link and then they can install the project. Then there is the QR code, which we used in the hands-on exercise at the beginning. You can copy and paste this in a Twitter, a website, etc. Now, one recommendation is once you get this, you make a copy of this image, make sure that, you add like a little border, like a white border around, because it makes it much easier to scan. If you don't put the white border around and you have a black background, some phones might get in trouble trying to scan the code. Anyways, the other option I want to highlight is this one, the access code, which we also provided in the initial hands-on exercise. So the access code you can enter from within the app to unlock the project and download it. It's a random sequence of numbers and strings, so you really need to type it in correctly. It's also case sensitive. Sharing your projects publicly doesn't mean that people are going to magically start using them. Speaking of magic, last Christmas we put together a public project to help people map Santa in Christmas with QuickCapture. And we put together a story map to present the project to people, to encourage them to map Santa. And we gave them steps 1, 2, 3 to get the app, download the project, and start contributing to the map. I love using story maps to do this, kind of to give visibility to the project and to provide people very easy instructions to get engaged with it. Also, from a story map like this, you can link at a live dashboard to help people look at all the data that people are contributing. Just an idea, but basically the point I'm trying to make is, again, making your project public is not enough. You need to engage with people, and you have tools in ArcGIS Hub and in the story maps that can help you greatly with that. Many of you work with ArcGIS Enterprise, so I want to spend a couple of minutes sharing a few ideas. First of all, the product is supported with Enterprise 10.7.1 and above. However, technically it can work with previous versions as well. The only issue here is that you need to manually register the mobile app and designer within your portal as applications. This can be done. There are instructions that we share with you in GeoNet in case that you want to do that. The other point I want to make is that ArcGIS Enterprise includes QuickCapture Designer. So if you go to the app launcher, you're going to see it. Now, the version that comes with ArcGIS Enterprise is not necessarily the latest. It's whatever version we had available when ArcGIS Enterprise was being manufactured. If you want to work with the latest version, which we update every 8 weeks or so, you can use a hybrid approach where you connect the ArcGIS Online hosted QuickCapture Designer with your own ArcGIS Enterprise instance. If you simply go to quickcapture.arcgis.com, you will get to this page. And here you can say, I want to sign in with Online, or I want to sign in with ArcGIS Enterprise. If you pick ArcGIS Enterprise, we are going to ask you what is the address of your portal, basically the web adapter. That way, any project you create is stored against your ArcGIS Enterprise instance instead of ArcGIS Online. This one is also interesting. There are some times when you have people out there in the field, they have been working for a few days and suddenly they cannot submit the data. Why? Well, who knows? Maybe the target feature layer has been accidentally deleted, or maybe the feature layer is no longer shared with them. Well, if that's the case, the data is not going to be lost. People in the field are going to get a message like this: failed to send records. And they can try again, they can discard, or they can send an email. If they choose this option, an email will be sent to the owner of the QuickCapture project. And that email will have an attachment, a QuickCapture Recovery file. It's basically a file with an extension QC, as in QuickCapture R, Recovery. And this is a file that contains a SQLite database, all the photo attachments, and also text files describing the feature layer schema that we were trying to target. You can open this file. It's just a zip file. You can rename the extension and open it up. But alternatively, you can also use the QuickCapture Data Recovery plugin or add-on for ArcGIS Pro that we have made available. So this is described again in our help and GeoNet. You can download this add-in, you install it, and then, as you can see here, you can navigate to the QCR file, and we show all the layers inside, all the attributes, etc. This is quite nice because then you can append these rows into an existing layer, you can review the information, you can make changes. If you want to get serious with ArcGIS QuickCapture, I absolutely recommend our GeoNet place. And there are different reasons for that. Let's have a look. The blog, everything you need to know about working with ArcGIS Enterprise and QuickCapture in a blog. Understanding data recovery files, video, tutorials, step-by-step instructions. How to use QuickCapture to create assignments in Workforce, entire blog for that. Understanding exclusivity groups. How to configure QuickCapture hands-free, voice control data collection. All explained. Crowdsourcing with QuickCapture, step-by-step. Understanding user inputs in ArcGIS QuickCapture, a full page or article on it. Announcements for new releases. They will timely be posted in GeoNet. And of course, the forum. You can post your own questions. If there are features in the software that you wish to see, you can actually post your ideas as well, and people vote. We are largely driven by comments, questions, and your ideas in GeoNet. I think we shared plenty to keep you busy for a while, but I want to share also a little bit about our roadmap. Our general philosophy towards releases is to have frequent updates synchronized across all supported platforms, iOS, Android, and Windows. Updates come roughly every 8 weeks. So what is coming? Well, we are now looking at our Q2, Q3 timeframe, and these are some of the ideas that we have. First of all, we are working right now with webhooks. Webhooks allow you to automate tasks after data gets submitted from the QuickCapture mobile application. We are going to follow the same pattern set up by the Survey 123 product. We have this already in our alpha builds, and we will make the beta builds available in the early adopter program very soon. We are also going to implement biometric authentication to help you log in more easily into the application, QuickCapture links to facilitate integration with other ArcGIS apps, finalize the PKI authentication for those of you working with enterprise, and we will support SAML PKI as well as web adapter based PKI authentication. In Designer, we are also working on this concept of the project analyzer. The idea is to help you identify issues or best practices in your projects before you save them. And we also are working on a collection of templates, QuickCapture project templates, so you can kickstart your projects more easily. We do have also a handful of research projects that I want to highlight. One of them is hands-free. A lot of people, a lot of you are asking, it's nice that I can quickly push a button in QuickCapture, but could I just talk to the application? Could I just use my voice to push a button? And this is actually totally doable at the moment in iOS. This is again described in GeoNet, but we are working on having this functionality built in within the application, as opposed to having to rely on the capabilities of the operating system. The other one is I want to highlight is this QuickCapture for UAV. So essentially the concept here is that when you have a drone and you fly, the typical workflow involves getting images into basically a laptop or a computer so you can analyze them later. What we want is to combine QuickCapture with your drone flight control software so you can capture data as the flight drones. And the concept is simple. We are going to work with the site scan team in Esri to make sure that when site scan is on, data, the location from your drone can be passed in real time to QuickCapture. So the locations from QuickCapture will not be coming from your phone. They will be coming from the drone you are flying. In that way, you can look at the screen, the live video from site scan in your iPad, and if you see something interesting as the drone goes over, you can actually push the button in QuickCapture and add a new point, or maybe fly over the boundary of a flooded area and then push the polyline button so you can capture that line automatically. Not to mention that with this, you will be able to not only see the live video coming from the drone in SiteScan, you can also see a live map as the drone flies by in the QuickCapture application. So this is, again, a research project. We are playing with the concept. If you are interested, again, let's connect via the QuickCapture Early Adopter Program. So we can give this a go and see if it is worth productizing. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please connect with us via the ArcGIS QuickCapture GeoNet group. Thank you.